Becky Chambers is arguably the most exciting, robust, and revolutionary author to enter the science fiction space in decades. I say arguably because I feel like I have to sound balanced, but I actually don't think there's an argument against it. Becky Chambers is a genius of science fiction. She is now my favourite science fiction author of all time, and I'm going to explore how and why she became that for me and probably for many others. She is certainly an important force within science fiction, but how did she do that? And why does it matter? In order to answer these questions, I'm going to look at 3 Becky Chambers books. This is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This is the first in the Wayfarer series, her main series of science fiction novels and her first published book. She also published this. It's a short novel. I don't think it's classified as a novella. It's about 150 pages, and it's called To Be Taught If Fortunate. This is a very different beast from the Wayfarer series. And then there's this. This is the first book in a upcoming planned series called The Monk and Robot books, and this is a psalm for the wild built. These 3 books represent 3 different avenues of science fiction. You can categorize or delineate or divide up science fiction into different subcategories. The different purposes of science fiction, the point of it, the different ways that we use science fiction to explore themes and ideas and worlds, etc. The Wayfarer series, which began with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, is a science fiction epic fantasy journey adventure thing. It's very much in the vein of Star Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy, Cowboy Bebop, Firefly, all of these TV series and movies that are predominantly about a ragtag group of people in a beaten up, battered old spaceship doing odd jobs, going on adventures, and bantering with each other. That's what the Wayfarer series is. It feels very reminiscent of Guardians of the Galaxy, Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, and Star Wars. These all have in common the idea that science fiction is used as a space for us to explore our imaginations. They are essentially fantasy stories in space. They are stories that involve wild and impossible places, populated by species and races and monsters and creatures and aliens that really are only bound by the creator's imagination. Star Wars is such a wonderful example of this. Whatever George Lucas thought up to put into Star Wars was put into Star Wars. And you kind of get the same thing here with the Wayfarer series. Becky Chambers has a lot of knowledge of science. Her family are scientists. And so she uses that knowledge to create this world and make it believable. But it's still fantastical. And at the heart of the Wayfarer series, you have this ragtag group of people. They're all from different alien races. They're all smushed together in a closed and confined space, and they go on adventures and do jobs together, and it's all about their banter, it's about their relationships. That's mostly what the first book in the Wayfarer series is about. It's very much a found family dynamic. It is very much about the people that we meet along the way and how they become part of our family, our group of friends, our colleagues, the people we live and thrive and survive and work with. This is an adventure series, an adventure story with wonderful characters. It is colourful and vibrant and lively, but it's still science fiction because it explores the fiction of science. It is set in space. It looks at things like interstellar travel and wormholes and galactic politics and all of the things you expect to see in science fiction, but it is still a fantasy story first and foremost, at least for me. This book and the Wayfarer series in general is so important to me as a science fiction fan because it represents a new lens through which to see the genre of science fiction. This is adventure and fun and atmosphere. This is not about galactic warfare. This is not political and religious allegories. It uses politics and religion and culture and belief systems in order to build its world, but it's mostly about science fiction as it pertains to imagination and possibilities. Becky Chambers is offering us a very beautiful and exciting world. It is rich and it is populated by strange creatures who all have different faiths and beliefs. They have different biologies and different worlds that they come from. This is such a rich and vibrant and colourful and beautiful place to live in and explore. She is injecting science fiction with beauty and majesty and exploration and journeys. And these are things that science fiction has always had, but Becky Chambers is kind of reminding us of that and reigniting the genre through these books. And we really should be so grateful to her for that. But as I said at the beginning, the genius of Becky Chambers comes from her diversity. And when you put the Wayfarer series down and look at this, To Be Taught If Fortunate, you're seeing a whole different side of Becky Chambers' imagination, her writing, her world building, and the genre as a whole. Another thing that science fiction is very good at is exploring science itself, exploring the boundaries of science, exploring where science may take us in the future, exploring where humanity may go. And that's what To Be Taught If Fortunate is about. It has a slightly Star Trek influence in the sense of what humanity's purpose is, what humanity can offer the galaxy, what it can do on a galactic scale. But it's very much a closed and confined kind of book. To Be Taught If Fortunate tells the story of 4 humans. It's set about 150 years from now in a future world that we have managed to save from the brink of oblivion in terms of climate change, etc. And it explores global politics vaguely. But these 4 people are part of a new NASA, a new spacefaring community that begins on Earth as kind of a Kickstarter campaign. This was a very, very big undertaking by thousands upon thousands of people all around the world to reignite our focus on the stars. And these 4 people are astronauts who have been sent to look at 3 planets and a moon, all of which definitely have life on them. So this is a book about exploration, but it's also a book about the possibilities of science. In the book, very, very early on, we learn about something called somaforming. Somaforming is a method of changing the biology of a living human being temporarily or for as long as is needed in order for them to adjust to their surroundings. Somaforming essentially transforms a person from the inside out in order to allow them to cope in different biomes. So they have antifreeze in their blood in order to survive in colder climates. They can increase their muscle density and muscle tissue in order to survive in stronger gravity. And these things do not transform them hugely. They don't become giant scaly lizard men or anything. It's subtle, but it's just about adapting to their environment. It's a clever piece of science fiction. It doesn't play a huge role. It just helps establish the science and the world and the capabilities of this place. There are laws and limits and rules when you write a story, and these are some of Becky Chambers's for this book. From here, our 4 astronauts are tasked with exploring a moon and 3 planets. For the sake of exploration, for the sake of seeing what the galaxy, what the universe has to offer us. Becky Chambers here has created speculative science fiction. The Wayfarer series is adventure. It is fantasy sci-fi. This is speculative sci-fi. It explores real-world politics a little bit. It explores climate change and borders and where humanity has gone and what it's accomplished and what it's avoided. But our 4 astronauts represent the next jump in human, not evolution, but exploration, curiosity, and it still has that Wayfarer sense of camaraderie, companionship, banter between characters. She's very good at dialogue writing, but it's amazing how she has turned from adventure fantasy sci-fi to speculative sci-fi, exploring the boundaries and the limits of science and how we might use it in order to better ourselves and explore. These are very empathetic characters. These are characters who are very concerned with right and wrong, with limits, with what is okay, morals and ethics. All of these things play a huge part in this book. Whenever they go to these planets, they are meeting little creatures, animals, bacteria, fungi, plants, etc. They're not meeting alien races that are more intelligent than us. They are going to planets that are almost like prehistoric Earth, with weird creatures that we have never come across before. She's exploring how they might survive in different climates, on different planets with different gravities and different behaviors, different distances from their suns, etc., etc. She's exploring the possibilities of what might exist out there in the universe, how creatures might live and grow and evolve in the first place to survive on different climates in different situations. She's putting her imagination to fantastic use here, while keeping it very, very grounded. It all feels possible. Aspects of the Wayfarer series feel impossible. These are intelligent alien races that we're meeting in these books that might not exist and nothing like them might exist, but this feels very possible. The idea of going to a planet that has a similar atmosphere and climate to Earth, but is very far away, and meeting little strange slug-like or rat-like creatures, it all makes sense. This is her using her scientific knowledge to create an amazing story. And then there's this. A Psalm for the Wild Built is an exploration of philosophy and the meaning of life. This is Becky Chambers very loosely using science fiction as a platform, as an environment, in order to explore the meaning of life, existentialism, and things that probably bother her or things that she considers on a daily basis. If you are someone who worries about their place in all of this, if you worry about what your life means and whether or not you're doing anything purposeful with it, this book is a real comfort. It tells the story of a young monk. They live on a moon. The people of this moon went through an industrial revolution that led to the creation of robots, which were effectively used as slave labor because they were machines, and they were used in the factories to create other machines. This is a story we've seen before in science fiction. These robots eventually become sentient, like a switch is flipped, and the people of this moon don't understand how this happened, but it happened. One day, the robots have a conscience. They have a mind of their own. They are free and independent. And the humans made the decision, I'm calling them humans, the people of this world made the decision to let the robots choose their own lives. They said, right, what do you want to do? You're sentient now. You are self-conscious, self-aware. What do you want to do? And the robots say that they want to leave. They want to go and explore nature. They want to explore the environment. They want to see the world for themselves. And so they disappear. The people make a pact with them that they will not bother the robots. And if the robots need anything, they can come back. And they go. And then generations pass, and the robots kind of almost become folklore. And now, this moon is a very, very different place. There is no technology. They have returned to a more simple, almost medieval way of life. And our protagonist is a young monk. They are bored with their life. They are bored with life in the monastery, and they choose to become what's called a tea monk, where they go off to different villages and towns and areas, and they offer tea to people and listen to their stories. They kind of act like a priest in confessional, where people talk about problems and things that have upset them, and the monk offers the right kind of tea and listens to them and maybe gives them some advice or at least some comfort. And the monk does this for a while until they again kind of get bored with the situation. They go off and explore off the beaten path a little bit and bump into a robot. And they are the first person to meet a robot in forever. And in the second half of the book, the two of them go on a little journey together. It's very sweet, it's very heartwarming, and the two of them, in their discussions about life, the universe, and everything, explore purpose. The monk is worried that they don't have a purpose, that their purpose has shifted, that their purpose has been lost. And they discuss this with the robot, and the robot has opinions and perspectives on this of their own, which are very, very different to the monks. This is philosophy. This is quiet, serene, but important reflection, observation, and consideration of life. This is still science fiction, because it's about robots and it's on a moon that is not our planet. But it's very, very different. This is not an adventure. This is not speculative sci-fi. This is using sci-fi as a space to explore possibilities and life and purpose. And it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. This is the kind of book that you buy as a present for someone to make them feel better about themselves. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So what we have here are three different types of science fiction: fantasy adventure, speculative sci-fi, and sci-fi being used as a platform to explore philosophy and the meaning of life. These are all very different ways of looking at science fiction and ways of using science fiction as a space, if you like. Space. Becky Chambers has her hands around all of science fiction. Every kind of science fiction, every way that you can use sci-fi as a genre to tell stories, she's doing it. She's doing all of it. She has become my favorite science fiction author and one of my favorite authors, full stop. It feels like she has a boundless and limitless imagination. I'm so happy that we have her as a writer. She's so important. Becky Chambers is a genius science fiction author. Subscribe for books.